So we have a quorum. I'm going to call to order. This is the October 28th meeting of Andrews Community Forest Committee. And as Ian Stokes, I'm going to start the meeting and then call for a co-chair. I think, so we have a quorum. Since we have two visitors who are public, I guess, who are applicants for vacancies on this position, why don't we just quickly go around and introduce ourselves, and the two of them can introduce themselves. I already said I'm Ian Stokes.
And I'm Cecilia Danks.
Melissa Wolliver.
Brad Elliott. Chase Rosenberg.
Right, Preston.
And you guys are,
I'm Jim Cochran.
Sam Pratt.
Yeah, well, welcome both of you. We have one member of public online, that's Kit Emery. I assume Kit Emery, it says Kit. So I would like to start the meeting. Actually, first we need a timekeeper and a minutes taker.
I'll be timekeeper.
Oh, you are fast.
Well, I'm not a good minutes taker. So.
If you accept cryptic minutes, I'll take the minutes.
They were okay last time.
Adequate?
Just okay.
That's great.
Oh, let's keep them just adequate, because then I won't be reappointed. Okay,
So I've been serving on this committee for actually half my term of 3 years, for a year and a half. And for a number of reasons, I thought it would be good just to review where we stand. And I think the urgency was increased because, by the evidence of impatience to get something happening in this committee. And so I wanted to cover that as well. So I've written a statement, but I'd like to read it just for the record. So my statement for tonight's meeting states, there's clearly a frustration with the lack of productivity and progress by the Andrews Community Forest Committee, primarily, though not exclusively, in establishing a plan for constructing new trails in the forest, and the desire for multi-use trails, including a connection with trails on the Sunshine Land. We've been hearing that. Most substantial actions in the forest must be based on documentation in the 2018 management plan and pending revisions to it. Much of our work is now directed at establishing consensus for revising components of the management plan, including a trails plan. It's very apparent to this committee, though probably not to everyone, that we have to function under the constraints imposed on all town committees, with the result that substantial discussions and all decisions must be made during our monthly 2-hour-long meetings. Most of us are accustomed to a very different style of work, where things can progress without interruptions until they're complete and approved of a hierarchical management structure. We probably all get frustrated by working within the constraints of monthly meetings. A couple of hours per month in committee are much less productive than the work methods that we are familiar with. However, in addition to committee time, I do believe that our responsibility to the town also requires making time individually to study documentation and literature on which objective decision-making depends, in addition to being as aware as possible of the pulse of public opinions. So it's become apparent that decisions about a trail plan cannot be made independently of other parts of the management plan, which in turn has required some major revisions and updates addressing the often conflicting expectations of natural resource conservation in the forest and human activities, including recreation. But first, let's not forget that our work has been progressing in many ways. Among the many achievements that I've witnessed, formal solicitation and documentation of public citizen opinions Secondly, approval of a vision and mission statements that provide a basis for decision-making. Bylaws updates to clarify what constitutes a quorum and formalization of the process for recruiting our committee members and for working with the Trails Committee and Conservation Commission have been formalized. We have a new improved website. Clarification of the easement provisions with the Vermont Electric, the people who run the power lines in Elko. That's been almost completely finished, some changes to that. And we have improved understanding of compliance with procedures consistent with zoning, the town plan, public meeting law, reporting to the select board and public. And we've established working groups to draft important components of revised management plan. Some significant progress has been made there, though much of that work remains in limbo pending individuals' work, more work by individuals and committees' consensus. Well, that's my assessment of where we stand. An immediate priority in order to conduct the business of our monthly meetings is having a new chairperson or co-chair. You know that my serious hearing loss has made it essential that we immediately fill the loss of Daniel's key role with an interim or long-term volunteer replacement. Cecilia and I effectively adopted an arrangement whereby she would run the meetings while I acted before, after, and during meetings as an administrative assistant, officially co-chair. Daniel and I continued that arrangement. It was also a real pleasure to work with him in agenda planning and implementation of our collegial decision-making. So let's work collaboratively and collegially and make the much called for progress. I do want to make a very small change to the agenda. I want to move up an item that had been listed under any other business towards the end. That's the bylaw revisions as passed by a select board on October 21st, just a week ago. And it's important that we know about those changes. We made some suggestions. We worked with town manager to ensure they were consistent, and they were taken to the select board, which took our bylaws very seriously and noticed that our bylaws stated 2/3 majority for making decisions. That's apparently wrong. It's inconsistent with other town policy, and I think maybe even statutes. So we must be, before we do anything more, we should be aware that in order to pass a motion or make any other decisions, we need not a 2/3 majority, but a simple majority is what's called for. The difference is small. 2/3 is 6 votes affirmative. A simple majority is 5 votes affirmative. Yes, Melissa, you were at the meeting.
Yes, I was there as well. I also wanted to say that in addition to some places saying 2/3 majority, one place said 2/3 majority of members present at a meeting. So they were noting that inconsistency and actually saying that that was actually not legal. So the simple majority is in line with every single other town committee.
Cool. And it's a simple majority of the seats, not who's at the meeting, right?
Simple
Majority of
the membership of the committee, which is considered to be 9, therefore simple majority is 5 affirmative. Yes, but I was really impressed. The select board took this really seriously and scrutinized our bylaws. They didn't just do a rubber stamp. So, but their decision is binding. I mean, the select board makes that decision. It has to be approved by the Vermont Land Trust, but in the meantime, those are the rules we work under. That we should be aware of that. The next,
Can I just, before we move on,
sure.
I want to thank you for your words and very very thoughtful and well said and important.
Oh,
So thank you.
oh, well, thank you.
Second.
And thank you for carrying the torch or the baton, you know, as we go through these transitions and being willing to do that.
Well, we all take this responsibility seriously, and thanks for that comment.
Did you want to have the transcript going?
So
Sorry,
closed captioning,
Do you want the closed?
Oh, I can,
captioning or
I'll
transcript?
do that once I stop talking.
Oh, okay.
Not yet.
It's recording.
And for anybody else who finds that useful, yes, let's get that going. But the next item, important item, is to elect a chairperson or co-chairperson for this and subsequent meetings of this committee. So I'm calling for a volunteer either in the short term for tonight or in the long term, or if your wishes are to have one chairperson, I guess that's going to be on the agenda too. That's not me.
But because I was gonna suggest maybe we rotate around if there's not one person.
Sorry, not hearing.
Maybe it's a rotating post too. Where you take it for 2 or 3 months at a time.
Maybe if nobody
nobody
wants it,
absolute-
that's
oh, yeah.
maybe plan B.
A fallback, yeah.
Ian, it seems to me like the secretarial role that you've been doing of really keeping documents organized and keeping us informed is a real strength of yours. And I don't know if you're interested in continuing with that, but that seems like something that we're doing well.
Yeah.
And I agree that it would be nice to have a co-chair. And I think you brought up that, but I don't know, I would be interested in having you continue in a secretary role, whatever you want to call it.
Co-chair.
Administrator.
Administrator, yeah.
I would suggest a co-chair role. I mean, one of the nice things with Daniel is that they worked more jointly than I think you and I worked in terms of coming up with the agenda and discussing that. And that was probably helpful for you. So, you know, if you were willing to continue as a co-chair.
I will, if that's the wishes of the
Right.
committee. And I know, Cecilia, when you came in, you generously said you will step up and take the chair role, at least for this meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I can't continue doing it because of other commitments, and I can never tell if I could actually make a meeting in person. And I tried to because I knew that this was an issue. But if anybody else wants to be the co-chair starting tonight, you're welcome to do so. If not, I will try to fulfill that role tonight. But I can't, I know I won't be able to keep up with that as the semester unfolds.
Well, thanks. So over to you. And I suppose at this point, we could just recognize that other people have joined the meeting, since we noticed just Kit Emery had joined, but we also have Dan Wolfson, Lisa Miller, and Bob Lowe
And Bob Lowe.
online.
So welcome. Are these working? You guys can hear us online? Probably, I guess so. Hopefully, I haven't complained.
So are we moving on from this particular topic,
No.
or is there an
We need to get a coach. We need to get a
Okay.
co-chair now, I think.
right? Yep.
Or were you gonna suggest?
No, I was asking a question.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can help for this meeting because I know that would be helpful, and Ian's been carrying this burden, but I can't do it going forward. So is there anybody else who'd be willing to co-chair with Ian moving forward? Either for the long term or try it for 3 to 6 months and see how it goes? You can nominate other people now. So,
I feel a little too intimidated by just the level of like staying on top of the different communications with the town with all that I have going on. I wouldn't want to set myself up to drop the ball on something. And so I feel willing and to help with the meeting facilitation. But it would, I don't want to set myself up to be a like underperforming co-chair in like communications and.
I think you said what I was going to say about me.
So nobody's stepping forward, so are we already at Plan B of rotating?
Yeah,
Well,
we
let's-
rotate.
Would you consider it?
No, I feel
Okay.
like, well, listen, I've been here 2.5 years.
So crazy.
And how many chairs have quit since I've been on this committee?
Not many.
Quit, not too many, just a few, not just quit, but like quit in like exasperation. So, or anger or other things that I try not to be part of my life. So
I'm in a new team now.
I
It's
feel
gonna
like
get
I would be
worse.
happy to do the rotating. If someone wants to rotate, I would be happy. to
Yeah, I
rotate.
mean, we have a solid administrator in Ian, rotating and,
Continuity keeper.
yeah,
Would that work for you, Ian, to have a rotating co-chair? With you sort of bearing the brunt of keeping us organized and doing the agendas and asking for material and working with this town, or is that too much?
With adequate notice, I think, we can't do that on a month-by-month basis. We should know a month or two ahead who's coming up. We should keep a list if we do it that way.
No, I agree. We could even decide tonight, the next 4 months this way.
But maybe you do it a couple months in a row.
Oh,
I
couple
think you
months in
get
a row.
more out. I think you're better rather than just in and out and in and out. And what do people think about that? Like 4-month terms? If we have 3 4-month terms right here, that's a year.
Yeah.
All right, who wants to start next month, sorry.
Tomorrow.
I'll do it.
Okay,
Sure.
4 months.
so you'll be on for December, January, and February?
Yeah.
Okay. Or did I said 4 months, right? December, January, February, March.
What about a 3-month?
Yeah, maybe 3 months.
We could do 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months.
12,
Then maybe I could do
1,
summer.
2.
Okay, so you'll do the first 3. That includes like the holidays. And then who wants to do the next 3?
So the next 3 would be March, April, May.
Mhm.
I can do March, April, May.
Okay. And right, are you up for the summer or should I try and do the
Sure.
summer? Okay,
What can happen between now and then, but
right. All right, good. So we accomplished something and
Yeah,
right,
we can check in on it too. And
yeah.
And
If
you'll
we
be up for
wanna-
the fall, Brad.
yeah, and if we, have hopefully new members and they provide input or
Yeah.
develop a voice that they feel like they want to lead with, that could be a thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I hear rotating co-chairs to begin with, and we reassess maybe every other month, or we just put it on the agenda, say, how is this going?
Yeah.
can we make that into a motion? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, that sounds good. Does anybody want to put forth a
Simple
motion?
majority.
I'll move that we share the co-chair position with Ian on a rotating basis with each person taking a 3-month stint, beginning with Chase, followed by me, right after that, and then Brett.
And then with regular, I would just amend that, friendly amendment, regular check-ins of how that's going for everyone, for
With the
for
regular
Ian
check-
as well as
Good
I'll
idea.
second that.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? I don't have to go through all of that because everybody said aye, except me, aye. So it passed with everyone.
All right, that's our time check.
Where are we for time? We're good?
We're should be moving on to,
Minutes,
B.
approved minutes.
Okay, yeah, approve 2 sets of minutes. Is that right? That's what A2 and A3. Does anybody want to move to approve? I guess we move second and discuss the minutes.
Mhm.
So if anybody had a chance to read that and wants to move to approve the September 16th, let's do them both together, and September 30th minutes? Yeah, sorry.
Just, I would like someone to amend those attending amend the list of those attending the September 16th meeting. At present, the members of the committee of the in-person people are correctly listed. The online people are listed as Paul Hough, Joy Reap, Bob Lowe, Dan Wolfson, and Tyler Merritt with a question mark. Tyler Merritt should be included, and Kit Emery should be included. So be certain I would ask for an amendment that both Kit Emery and Tyler Merritt be recorded as having been present online.
Was that the 16th though?
That's September.
Tyler
16th.
Merritt.
Yeah.
So who did the minutes for that meeting?
Not me.
Not me. I think it
That
might have been
was
Julian.
Julian, who's not
Julian.
present.
Okay. So I'll, so are you moving that we approve September 16th with that amendment? Okay.
Can I make that motion, or is it somebody
Oh,
else
you're a
have
chair,
to?
right?
I
Forgot.
move that we approve the September 16th minutes with that amendment.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. For September 30th, we just did the 16th. Are there any amendments or changes to September 30th that people would recommend?
Yeah, that was the extra meeting when we met on.
Was a work
site
party.
and-
Okay, did we have minutes for that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Melissa made some minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, does anybody move to approve those?
Move to approve the September 30th minutes.
Second,
Second,
discussion? I thought it was a lovely event.
yeah.
I think all of us were there. Yeah, okay. It's moved and seconded. How many, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, passed unanimously. All right, additions, changes to agenda. We did change moving up the bylaws. Any other additions or changes to the agenda? Okay, the Conservation Commission and the Trails Committee give brief reports, 5 minutes each. Do folks want to chime in? And that's usually Brad and Chase, right?
Yeah,
It was
we-
Daniel
Daniel,
and.
Oh,
Chase.
Daniel.
yeah.
We could ask Sam to, because you're not on the Conservation Commission, right? So
Yeah.
Sam, do you want to give us a brief update? Anything?
Sure. I guess, RCC did discuss, ACFC goings on briefly during the last meeting and sort of agreed, that RCC is not really going to butt in unless asked. There are differing opinions, on the committee about how much of a role RCC directly should play, in, this process. And the way things were left was that, unless asked for, unless you solicit input, RCC is going to, do their own thing. They're happy to advise, and would love to do so as it relates to, wildlife stewardship plan or other things. But the wildlife stewardship plan did make it on the agenda for the last RCC meeting. And after a little bit of discussion, it was decided that it wasn't really RCC's place to make any comments on a draft. So there's not a whole lot to report aside from, most of the people on RCC are aware of what's going on in this committee, but, aren't going to try to put a hand on the ball unless asked.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any conversation, questions, comments from the committee? Okay, then we'll do a public comment on both of them right after.
Richmond Trails Committee.
Right, that's what I
I'm
meant.
sorry.
And then the Trails Committee.
I'm sorry.
I have just a quick one. Sam, in general, did the Biofinder training, is there any news on that front?
Yeah, there is, I want to say it was in the agenda for this too, maybe not, but,
It is, yeah.
there are a couple of
in
prospective
the
dates,
agenda.
and I think that Judy sent out some invites to committees who might be interested in attending Biofinder training. So there are gonna be 2 of them. I could get the exact dates, and there's a cap of, I think it was 15 maybe 20, I guess, depending on how many people are interested. The suggestion was that to the committees who the Biofinder seems relevant to, because it's not really relevant to all committees in the town. The suggestion was send 2 to 3 people to the training, if possible. I'm sure that, may or may not happen for every single committee, but yeah, I mean, there's an email that went out, so I'm assuming that maybe that went out to chairs of the various committees and that will be distributed, or mentioned at the next set of meetings so that people can sign up.
Okay.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
That was a good question for me, just jumping back to the wildlife stewardship plan. So are we going to invite the RCC to comment on that? I mean, would we be inviting the Trails Committee to comment on the Trails Plan? Is that an expectation or no? Or are we, did we ever have plans to do that or?
I personally don't know that we had plans, but it doesn't mean we can't decide to do that, but that's a
Right.
good question.
Right, I mean, I think it sounds like they were debating that question, so I just didn't know if we had a policy.
I would think maybe like sending word to them that we're gonna discuss
Mhm.
at the meeting and inviting them to send a member to participate.
I agree. I think that's rather than sending them a copy and saying, here, mark it up and send it back to us.
So we get these lags.
Yeah,
with
then you're
that.
gonna get like, like all this stuff and then you gotta, then they want to send it back. Well, you didn't take our suggestion. And so, right, I think that's a really good idea,
Yeah.
inviting.
And I don't see any reason why we should restrict the wildlife for the Conservation Commission, the Trails for the Trees
Yeah.
Committee.
Okay.
We could just keep them abreast and invite them to send one whenever we're reviewing those.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Or take the same approach. I appreciate that, Sam, that it's like, let us know when you want us to help and we're willing to help kind of approach.
Mhm.
And so it sounds like the onus is on us to decide when we need to reach out.
And I will, I guess, amend that by saying it's understood on RCC that there have been a lot of cooks in the kitchen, both, in this committee and in the community. And I think that it's difficult to start adding people and adding people and adding people. So that's why RCC wanted to respect the boundary and not really try to influence things too much, because I know that decision making has been very hard on this committee. And trying to add more and more voices just makes it really hard to sort of wade through everyone's opinion and come up with something.
Okay, Ian, go ahead.
Well, if, this issue, of course, is complicated because Daniel was the member of both committees and no longer is. And so that vacancy that's a vacancy on this committee as a member of the RCC. And of course, we hope to fill that and be able to establish a communication through the
Yeah,
new person.
right. I mean, I guess ideally, we have a member sitting in here from each committee that would just solicit feedback at the prior meeting.
Right, but we still are we still missing someone from, you're not replacing Daniel, right?
Yeah,
It might be.
Sam would be
Okay.
replacing Daniel.
Okay, all right,
Well, that's
be
an
determined.
option.
okay,
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to it. The RCC has considered
Thank
this
you.
issue.
okay.
Mhm.
All right, and so Ian also pointed out that we have for later on the agenda, talking about the Biofinder workshop.
Yeah, I just saw that.
So we might just, because I was thinking, when is that? So we'll get to that in a little bit later.
Yeah, I apologize.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure, okay, in terms of public comment on this last set of,
Do you want to talk Trails Committee
oh, I'm
first?
sorry, I thought, yeah,
Um,
thank you, Trails Committee too.
Yeah. A few interesting things. One that's not related, but just interesting is we got a ton of FEMA money to rebuild Old Jericho Road. I think like $140,000 or something. And so that's rolling with the town roads, and Callie Ewald is helping coordinate that with them, with Trails, but FEMA walked it with Josh, and that's gonna be repaired and will be, I don't know, a town forest adjacent thing at some point. That was interesting.
Next year, repairs next year
I would guess it'll happen.
in 25.
Yeah,
May I
and
comment on that?
yeah,
It was discussed in the RCC meeting as well. I think Pete was there, not Josh. And maybe they were both there, I don't know, Pete Goslin. And then I think it's 130,000, and also the expectation is that's not going to be enough to do all of the repairs. But then there was also potential discussion of the conservation reserve fund being used, of course, that would have to be approved by the select board, but apparently expenditures over the amount given by FEMA can be submitted to FEMA and then reimbursed at like a 75% rate or something. So, if it costs 200K and the conservation reserve fund ended up covering 70,000, then I don't know what the math is there, but like 17,000 would be all that Richmond would pay for that 70,000.
That is astounding that
Oh.
130 will
Yeah.
not cover.
and they guaranteed another 40,000, I think,
Wow,
after that. I know, yeah, it's a big
for
number.
a short little slice of trail,
Yeah,
130.
it's very eroded. For those of you who've been on it, it's like part of the trail has completely disappeared and just fallen into the stream. And then I think it, needs a engineering plan of some kinds, there's the bridge replacement. And it's also, because it's like a class 4 road, I think there's some other stuff going on there because it was originally a road and I think it still has that status. So I think maybe different rules apply to it than a normal trail. So I don't know all the details, and the Trails Committee is really heading that up more than RCC, but Callie and I'm spacing.
Allison was helping with it.
Okay. He was at the last RC or ACFC meeting.
Oh, Jake Ide?
No,
He was-
yeah, forgive me, but there were a couple of
Jim?
a couple representatives from the Trails Committee that showed up at the RCC and we talked about it for, 30-40 minutes probably.
How long is that stretch that needs work?
I mean, probably a half mile, 3/4 of a mile. I mean, all of Jericho Road old Jericho Road is about a mile, maybe 0.8 miles. Most of it needs repair. The top section is, I don't think, being discussed because it's on private land. There's a right of way, but it's really like from the bridge and below. So probably a half mile of trails.
And then the other two kind of pertinent piece of info is we're switching as a town to using trail forks as a trail conditions notification system for all town and private trails. And it's what's, I think, the most common source for people to check trail closures and trail conditions. And so Richmond Mountain Trails and Richmond Town Trails have been talking about it for a while, and any future trails, current and future trails in Andrews would ideally use that same system, where we really want to encourage the public to go to one source, and there'll be, a few people that are committed to updating trail status as things change. And so it's something that's easy to embed on websites, so the trail conditions can be embedded in the Andrews website, the Richmond Mountain Trails website, the town website, very easily, or people can go to the app. So if you,
And do neighboring towns use that?
yeah, I think all of the town trail systems use it. If you look at, I think Fellowship of the Wheel is the group that does all Chittenden County trails that aren't managed by other groups. So they do most of the surrounding, the Huntington things, and they have a really nice format on their website, on phone and on the web, if you want to look at the interlay there. So that'll happen this winter. And
So you're saying Trail Forks is embedded in Fellowship of the Wheels?
website, yeah,
And phone app, okay.
yeah.
I think this is the longest agenda item, and not longest treatment of our agenda item, which is the updates with these other two committees. I think I would say we're probably straying a little bit from Andrews Community Forest, and we should,
Well, the one other thing is quite pertinent, that Richmond Mountain Trails came and like confirmed their commitment to maintaining any future Andrews trails and taking full responsibility for maintenance and any trail building needs and getting the volunteers necessary. So they reconfirmed it as a group.
Well, that's really cool. That, I mean, that could really work well, but we are the group that would say yes or no to that. I mean, they can't say, you can't just tell us we're doing it.
No, but if we were,
Offering.
I mean, the question came up, who's going to maintain these, who's going to pay for the upkeep of bridges and this, and it was brought up as something that was a potential roadblock. And
So they're gonna offering to pay for it too, or just maintain?
yeah, I think with volunteer energy and their budget for materials, and they collect all of the membership money for people that use Richmond trails. And I think a lot of people don't differentiate between Cochran's and Richmond Town Trails. And they see, oh, Richmond Mountain Trails is a trail organization, I'm joining them. And so I think their ethic is that money needs to be spread around to help all the town
Right.
trails, because most users don't realize that there are all these separate groups.
Right.
Okay.
Do they have something in writing about for that?
Well, let's hold off on that, because I agree with Melissa that we need to, we need to specify how and when we want to accept that help, sort of. So in terms of, I don't know that we need anything in writing right now, and I think we should be moving on.
Yeah.
Sure,
That's
yeah.
And
right.
I just wanted to note real quick, I think, before accepting a proposal like that, we should also, maybe confer with the town manager. I mean, if we're making a decision about how trails are going to be maintained and if they're spending money on them, I just liability and who's the ownership, that probably should be run by the town manager.
Yeah, I mean, I think really it's an offer of,
Offer.
and they would be open to it being directed by us or whatever, but
Right.
they're just saying, we have great outreach,
Mhm.
we have great funding, we want to be available.
this is an accountability issue, I think is what you're saying, Melissa, that we're a town committee, the Trails Committee is a town committee, and we are responsible to the town, so engaging outside organizations is, it's got to be done in an appropriate, correct way. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
That's fine. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
great. Way to paraphrase it. Right.
I don't see any hands.
I don't think we can just
raised.
go, yeah, cool, that's great. Like,
So,
So, yeah, I mean, this was
I'm
the
thinking
public comment period.
other public comment.
Is there anything folks want to, who are here or online, want to share about these updates before we move on?
Just a tiny thing. I walked the Old Bass Trail to the east the other day. And the large-ish stone culvert is actually operating correctly, but downstream, due to the flooding, the wetland has moved up to the road or the trail. So an excavator at some point, or rerouting the road or something, because that bridge seems to be okay. It's the wetland adjoining is backing up to the bridge and around it. So just,
And that's a section that Maplewind uses. Is this what?
Rarely,
you described?
yes, they can use it, but they're not currently not much, they're not using it much. Yep.
So, I'm just wondering about the urgency. It seems like that's something we should talk about in a future meeting. See if we have a list
Sure.
of these things.
Yep.
Is that, okay. Okay.
So we. moved
Oh, wait,
to-
it looks like
yeah.
Lisa Miller has raised a
Oh,
hand. So I want to recognize Lisa. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I was just wondering who's off screen, to my right, I guess towards the middle of the room, there's at least one person. I think it's Daniel, but I wasn't sure. I just wanted to see who's over there or ask who's over there.
There's two people off screen. Do you guys want to lean in and say
Yeah,
hi.
sure.
They're gonna be on the agenda pretty soon.
Ah, okay.
So that's Sam and Jim Cochran,
behind
who
you.
were maybe future members of the committee, depending on our deliberations.
Great,
And
okay,
yours.
well, good, thank you. Okay, that's good.
Closed caption knows how to spell your name.
All right, thank you. So moving on, consideration of applications to join the committee by Sam and Jim Cochran. We have 30 minutes or so for that, although we are near the end of that time period already. How do you want to proceed on that?
Yeah,
Jim?
that's my question, is how should we do this? I mean, I think this is a good opportunity to have an exchange, have questions from the applicants and questions from us. And do we do the two applications sequentially or somehow in parallel?
I suggest we do them
Yeah.
sequentially. I suggest that
Jump in.
each applicant give us a short introduction to themselves.
Bring a chair.
And then we have time to ask questions of that single applicant. And then we move on to the next applicant, have that person introduce themselves and have time for questions for others.
I'm noting that because both of you have provided application, formal written applications, and they're in the packet.
All right, so does anybody suggest any modification of that? I think that's great, Melissa, that we'll invite each person to just give us a few comments, understanding we've seen what's in the package, opportunity for questions, and move on to the next person. The one thing is whether in the past, sometimes we've done a closed session to discuss it among ourselves. I don't know if we want to do that tonight. Or if we actually need a vote.
Not legal.
It's not legal, yeah,
Okay,
that's
Then,
correct.
okay, then what we did before was illegal. And I was just remembering it badly. How's that?
Yeah,
Okay.
but we
Poorly.
did do it once, that's right.
Back when we were young and rebellious.
Yeah. All right, so alphabetically, maybe go with Jim Cochran.
First, I just want to say I'm really thankful to every committee, every town committee, but especially the work that you guys have done. I know there's, been some stress through the process but it really is, it's an awesome thing. And I have a huge amount of respect for all that you guys have put in. There's some great stuff on the website. It's obviously a beautiful piece of property and you guys have done a great job of stewarding it. And really for me, I feel like this, I knew there was an empty seat and I felt like it was an opportunity to help carry the load for a little while and hopefully collaborate and be a positive, productive member. So I do think with what our family is doing with the ski area, there's some carryover in terms of, there's this land stewardship piece, there's the recreation piece, there's a community resource piece. So I feel like I can bring some of that perspective, but also learn a lot too. I know I was on the Conservation Commission for a couple of years and I learned so much from those folks. So, and I know that you guys have expertise that I don't have. And so I'm definitely looking forward to learning as well. So I think that's all I got.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
We're looking, as we're looking at our trails plan, seeing that there's going to be zoning requirements on us, some for engineering plans for a slope that's over 20% and problems with any areas that are over 30% not being able to maybe be constructed. I was wondering if you did any zoning, went through any zoning when you did the trails at Cochran's, or if you ran.
We haven't
into
had
any
to,
issues?
we haven't had to go through any zoning. How old is that? I think that's new enough that it hasn't affected us in
Those
any way.
regulations?
Yeah, the change to the zoning
Sure,
regs.
Yeah.
We go through Act 250 for
Mhm.
anything at the ski area, which is very, very, very stringent.
Mhm.
And so that's definitely challenging, and a long process at times. But no, we haven't had to do anything with zoning.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know how, well, yeah, I'm curious to learn about that because, yeah, I'm curious what David Sunshine thinks actually, in particular, because he's, so well versed on all that stuff. Cause there's some questions about, definitions of a trail and how a trail is used. And like for us with some of our sugaring roads and stuff, there's there's gray area with Act 250, and I can imagine there's probably some gray area with the town forest stuff, with the zoning regs, pre-existing, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, I think my sense is that that's an opportunity to improve the final product, basically, right? To have zoning input and include that into any potential trail. That's sort of the way I look at it. I think, like with Act 250, the wetlands person and the streams person might have a different preference on how something is constructed, and neither is right or wrong, but working together, you can sort of improve the final product. And I feel like with zoning, that's a great box to check, and to get that input and include that into any trail plan. So no.
Great, thank you, though. Yes, you do have
Western
the
law.
experience.
Ian,
Yeah, so I'm hearing that, do we call you Jim, Jimmy, or James?
All good. Yeah.
Well, Jim has obviously has experience which can be translated or applied some way to the Andrews Committee. I'm hearing, which is useful. My question actually to Jim is, to what extent have you explored the Andrews Forest? How familiar are you with the lay of the land? And in particular, there were trails, proposed trails flagged by Arrowwood and Sanuasti. Have you had an opportunity to see any of those, or existing roads?
Yeah, I spent a little time when I was on the Conservation Commission looking at it. And of course, I look at that hillside every day from the ski area when I'm working up there. And I think I've biked the Urbanic Way. I've ridden my bike up that, and that's about it. So I definitely don't know that side of the hill as well as the other side. And I'm,
Whatever happens, we should give you a tour.
yeah, for sure. But
I think it's really important that for all of us who are able to investigate the proposed trails, especially the proposed route up to the ridge, we should be familiar with the lie of the land, not just maps. But that's an aside, really. Thanks for addressing that.
I do feel like, being the candidate from the Trails Committee, I don't want to be pigeonholed by that. And, I don't know how that officially works, but I definitely feel like I would imagine thinking about things much more broadly than just trails. That's, I think, very important for this piece of property and this committee and the whole thing. So I don't want that to be my angle, so to speak. I think it's something that obviously I have some experience with, and I would say I'm a trail user, but that's not to say that's really my goal here.
that's great. And-
Okay.
And
yeah.
that was the intention, not so much you have supposed to represent the trails perspective,
Okay.
but it was to make sure all the perspectives are at the table, that trails would recommend to, and to have interlocking committees, and then there would be a member in each, so we'd have communication open. But then we're expecting people to bring their full range of experience and concerns as somebody who lives in this town. And we imagined actually that there might be people that both the Trails Committee and the Conservation Commission would see as valuable, like, okay, we're happy with either of these. So who knows, you may fall in that category. But I like the idea of somebody who works in land management as well, that understands that sort of managing land for public use piece. I think is really helpful. Go ahead, right.
Just comment. One of the things I learned in the last year is that on our property, if we're looking to install a logging road, it's regulated by Forest Parks and Recreation. But if we're looking to install a recreationally used trail, it's not regulated by Forest and Parks. It's regulated by the town zoning. And that's new to me. I didn't know.
Even on
You're talking
private land?
Your own,
Private land,
on your own private land?
right, based on what I'm reading in the zoning regs. So, I mean, it's different, so
Yeah.
the use is different, whether it's forestry use or recreation use, so.
And that I'm getting off topic here, but the idea that when we met with Tyler Masha,
Right. From the-
Ian and I did. And we asked this question, is this all brand new? Is this all new? And he said, it's not new. I think it's just that maybe it hasn't been well known and
Right.
implemented.
Right.
So it's not like we're being tossed something brand new onto us.
Just that this is an aside, maybe slightly off agenda. Tyler Machia has offered to attend our November meeting to address these issues.
Yep.
Great. All right, any other questions, comments?
Just a real quick one, Jim, and there's no right or wrong on this. I was just curious, do you guys work with, I don't know, state experts on various things, you know, like the county forester or anything? I'm wondering if you've got contacts that you can bring in.
John Cart. Good one. John Cart's good. No, yeah, our family's land is in current use, so we have a forester, and which means we also interact with the county forester. And yeah, it's really with a state agency, it's mostly through Act 250 that we interact with them. And that brings in, you know, that could be, yeah, any of those folks, fish and wildlife, wetlands, streams, rivers. Yeah, historical, they're, you know, they come around to
Oh, really?
chat at times, and yeah, it's a little everything. Yep. And it's, you know, that regulatory process for us is sometimes awesome and sometimes it's really challenging. And at the end of the day, it's definitely, you know, whether it slows things down or whether you get some great ideas or input from the state, it's always great to know that there was a process where the public was informed and various perspectives were put forth and kind of understood and incorporated into anything that was done. So I like Act 250 in that respect. I think it's very well designed for that. I think sometimes it does, like for, you know, certain things, it gets to be cumbersome, you know, for say recreation, right? It's definitely not how it was intended when it was put together in the 70s. So, but yeah, but it works. So.
Okay, last question maybe for Ian?
One short question, if
Yeah.
I may. For Jim, because the Andrews Community Forest has a conservation easement, and it's a written document that we have to adhere to. We're actually surrounded, not totally surrounded, maybe half surrounded by other conserved land, Sunshine Land, the VYCC, and the Prelco land. So we work in that context. So a question actually I'm unclear as the Cochran land that you're in many ways responsible for it. Is there a conservation easement on that or
Part
any
of
of
it.
that land?
Part of it, there was I think it was 250 acres that was owned by the DeStefanos, the cheese factory family. And they gave that land to UVM. And UVM installed it. My understanding is that it was pre-conservation easement. They weren't really conserving land with easements at the time. So they wrote into the deed that land couldn't be developed, can only be used for recreation, and maybe it says agriculture or something, but recreation is definitely a part of it. The ski area is not on that land. There are some trails, there are sugaring lines. So that's about half of the property. The rest of it is not, there is no conservation easement. It's something we've thought about and we've met with folks about it. And I think it's probably something that's inevitable, but I don't know when it will happen. And I think there's all, like, you know, with the Sunshine Land, the town forest, Prelco, that abuts the bigger sort of habitat unit, right? As I understand it now, Mansfield State Forest, et cetera. And that was a really advantageous piece to protect, right? That was, and for us on the other side of the interstate and the river, I think there's maybe not quite enough land there. You know, we could probably with some leverage, maybe get a conservation easement in place with the Vermont Land Trust, but we would have to talk to the right folks. So definitely something we're thinking about. I don't know when. There's basically as the ski area is a nonprofit, and that's been our family's way of conserving the land. The nonprofit leases the land. There's also a sugaring operation that has a lease to the land. And that's allowed us to not develop it, to keep it, you know, as forested and a ski area, but yeah,
Yeah, thanks.
anyway.
Thank you. All right. If there are no final questions, maybe move on to Sam.
Do you want to vote?
Well, the minutes of the Trails Committee for the 15th of this month show that there was a vote to support Jim to support his application to serve on this committee, as the Trails Committee is entitled to do, is asked to do. So there was a vote, 7 yes, 1 no, nays, and 1 abstention.
Okay,
That's minuted from the
Okay.
meeting.
One
So-
closely related abstention.
so, so does that suggest we should actually take a vote? I don't know how it sort of sugared off in our minutes that got approved at the select board, but so we then vote to also put forward this as a candidate to the select board? Or that we, or just that we support the candidate? They go directly to the select board, is that right? Okay. So does anyone want to make a motion?
I'd move that we support Jim Cochran to be the next member of the ACFC.
Okay, second?
Second.
Any additional discussion?
I'd just like to say really quick, long time ago, when we started getting into this, you know, trying to figure out what we were gonna do, Jim took the initiative, called me up.
Sorry.
I said on the committee, it might have been on conservation, I don't remember that. But I was the coolest thing, we had a great discussion, you know, I don't know, maybe agreed to disagree, but it was super. I
Mhm.
told many people about that, and I really respected him for that, you know, coming forward. That way,
Mhm.
so.
That initiative and that kind of discussion. Great, good to know. All right, so are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. And so it's carried unanimously. No abstentions, I didn't see. All right, thank you. So I think the next step is we add our vote to the Recreation Committee's vote and we forward you to the Select Board for, they might want you to show up too, I'm not sure, maybe Lisa
I
knows.
think they will. yeah. I think they will.
More meetings ahead of you.
I'll plan on, yep.
Thank you,
Lisa's
Jim.
gonna wanna grill
Get
you.
on this committee easily.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a
Well,
fun conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa.
I'm
Yeah.
kidding, Lisa.
All right, Sam, do you want to start with just a little opening comments about yourself and your interest in this committee and
Sure. Yeah, Sam Pratt. I am a Richmond resident. I've lived here for a little over 4 years. I'm a homeowner in the Valley View Road neighborhood. So that is, you know, adjacent to the Andrews Community Forest. Not my land, but the neighborhood is. I am, as of this June, a member of the Richmond Conservation Commission. I've been attending these meetings and also RCC meetings for the better part of a year, I would say. Sometimes in person, sometimes remotely, sometimes catching up after the fact. Yeah, I mean, I would be the Richmond Conservation Commission's representative, not recommendation. That's the seat, I suppose, that I'm would be filling ideally. And yeah, I mean, I care about conservation. I don't really have any professional experience, but it kind of started as a homeowner and, you know, finding a bunch of invasives on my property and kind of doing that. And then I'm also a dog owner, you know, spend a lot of time in the woods walking. So then just because it's close in proximity, ended up, you know, wandering onto ACFC or ACF a few times. And then since then, I've spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours in and around that forest, just because it's all walkable from my house. So I am very familiar with the landscape in that forest. And yeah, I mean, I know that this has been a challenging committee, and I don't know, I feel like while I will probably lean a little bit more towards the conservation side as the RCC representative, I am also somebody who likes to recreate in the forest or just in general. I'm a skier. I like to snowshoe, hike. I'm a dog owner, do a lot of walking. I also have kind of by way of completely like not through outdoor sports, but I'm also aware of ADA and some of the like, ADA compliance through actually websites because of my job. So I sort of know a little bit about, accessibility, I suppose, and making things like fairly accessible to, all members, whether that's a physical property or, a digital property, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, I'm just interested in trying to help, and I know that RCC very much wants to have somebody representing them, and I was also, I think, the only person interested in doing so. So not a whole lot of people piped up when Daniel left, probably because, I mean, I personally think he did an excellent job. I understand his frustration, and so yeah, it doesn't surprise me that not many people were excited to put their name forward. But I
So-
think I can do a decent job.
Quick question. So we know what Jim does for a living.
Yep.
But what do you do for a living when you're not attending our meetings?
Oh, sure. I am a software developer.
Okay, so I see future website management for our committee in your.
Potentially. I mean, I guess I will say I've done a little bit of subcommittee or working group. I don't know what we're calling it these days, but I did work with Brad a bit on sort of the initial website redesign. He really did most of the work, but I did provide some feedback. We talked a little bit about, how to redo the website, and I had a few suggestions early on. I've also helped work on the wildlife stewardship plan with Brad and Chase. Again, I think all the credit, most of the credit goes to Brad. He's done a ton of work. And then I've also attended a few discussions that we had, I guess it was just one, with Chase, Brad, Daniel, and myself, about trails and trying to figure out, how to find a compromise there. So I do have some experience, sort of behind the scenes, I guess, with this committee already.
Any questions, other comments, questions?
I just have a comment. I'm feeling lucky that we have two applicants that are really in tune with like the history and kind of the status of our committee and know us. It seems like a huge asset relative to, I had to think like 99% of the potential joinees would need a lot of sort of brought up to speed. And Sam, I know, like, really has kept track on where the committee is. And when he's joined us in subcommittees or working groups, it's been an easy, like, he's up to, on everything, so.
He knows the terrain too, which is.
Yeah, he uses the forest a lot.
Yeah, which
Great.
is really cool.
Ian, did you have a comment?
One comment, one question, if I may.
Sure.
Comment actually follows from what Chase was saying, was I had the pleasure of walking on some of the Andrews land, the west side, which I was not very familiar with. Sam led a small group of people to actually looking for, the original intention was to look for bobcat habitat.
Yep.
Or
Oh, in
places
those
that look
ledges.
potentially, ledges. Question, based on Ethan Tapper was the county forester until recently and had I believe a huge impact on his own land, but also advising the Andrews Community Forest and also other forested lands in his role as Chittenden County Forester. So, and he's written a book, which is, I think, becoming a bestseller about how to love a forest, and he spoke about that at the library. So my question is, have you read his book, or did you attend the library, or are you familiar with Ethan Tapper's?
I am. He's been on my land and advised me early on when I was trying to take care of invasives. So he helped me sort of identify what I had on my property that was a problem. I've been to a few of his walked to the Catamount Center, and I did go to his book release and reading at the library. I have a copy of his book. I have not yet read it. But yeah, Ethan's great. I think he's done a lot for, well, a lot for forestry in general, but definitely for the town and the state. I think he's made it really accessible and more exciting for a lot of people, which I think is great. Because somebody like me who has no background in environmental science, you know, I work in a completely different field. I don't do anything really nature related in my day job. It's really nice to have people like that who are trying to get the word out there and get people more excited about, you know, forestry and invasives and conservation, and just being you know, responsible about how to manage a forest. So I've been working through the list of things that he gave me to do on my land, and thus far the results have been good, but it's sort of a lifelong endeavor to try to keep up with the invasives and, you know, inspecting trees and trying to, you know, open things up and, you know, create some, you know, good snags and whatnot.
He would say that about his property too.
Yeah, well, he has a lot more to work on than I do. My property is 4 acres. His is, I think, like 100.
I highly recommend Ethan Tapper's book. Have you read it?
I have not read it. And
Oh,
I
you
have
should
to-
have.
he-
It should be required reading, and you've got a copy.
I do. I will be reading it soon.
I learned a huge amount. I was really astonished at how much insight he had as a forester and could convey to people like me, who person who wants to understand how forests function at numerous levels, you know, from the soil up and the animals that live there and everything. Very, very good book.
Yeah, he quit the job to get his master's degree. So he did all that work without a master's. So he's in my research lab now with another professor is advising him. And we're like, why don't we just give you the degree? So you can move on. But, at any rate, so he's already kind of written his master's thesis. Any other comments or questions for Sam?
Some information then from the Conservation Commission. The minutes have not yet arrived from the October meeting, but I got an email from Judy Rosaski saying that there was a unanimous vote in favor by the Conservation Commission to recommend that Sam would be a member of both committees, be the representative from Conservation Commission.
Great. So with that, are there any motions to support Sam's application?
A motion to support Sam's application.
I'll second.
Okay,
Second.
you have a second, so Wright's gotten all those. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you both. We'll pass that on with the unanimous vote and the previous votes to the select board. They're the ones that will be doing the appointment. And as I said to Jim, you're likely to have to attend.
I expect to attend.
And I expect the select board will have these two appointments on their agenda, the first Monday in November, first Monday of next month.
I've been keeping an eye out just to make sure I know. I wasn't sure when to expect it on the agenda, so I'll keep looking.
Yeah,
Although may get an email as well.
hopefully they'll
I
reach
think
out
so.
to you. And Ian's really good at getting the material to
Oh, awesome.
Josh. So, yeah, so hopefully next January, you guys will be on our committee in actively taking on tasks.
How are you taking minutes?
Yeah.
I-
Start there.
I do believe I did minutes the first day that I was attending an RCC meeting as a member.
So that's November 25th is our next meeting. And it would be great to have you guys there. You're obviously welcome to stay to the end of this meeting. But thank you for applying. I feel like Chase, we're really lucky to have both of you step up in our time of need.
Thank you.
And don't feel like you have to stay if you got other stuff.
Yeah, this evening.
I'll stick around. I
You're
mean,
totally invited.
I'm usually here anyway, either digitally or in person,
Okay.
but I'm happy to give folks their seats back. I don't need to be, you
No,
know.
you might as well
Yeah.
sit
You can sit wherever you'd like.
here if you're staying.
Many thanks for showing up and for putting your names forward.
Yeah, real thank you
And
guys.
welcome to stay if you want to hear more. Otherwise, thank you very much.
A pleasure.
Thank you. All right, so we're running about 25 minutes behind.
Oh.
But I think we've had good discussion, and I think it was really worth getting to know Jim and Sam a bit more. So the next agenda item is prioritizing the ACFC pending documents for management plan revision, with a goal of establishing a plan to incorporate materials into a revised management plan. Ian had thoughtfully added 50 minutes to the agenda for that. We won't have 50 minutes. I'd still like to end by 8, if that's okay with folks. So Ian, how do you foresee this piece going?
Well, I made a list of documents that we've created over the past couple of years, maybe. And that went into the packet.
And that's the revised objectives. No, that's the pending documents list.
Yeah, that would be it.
Mhm.
So it lists a lot of material that has been worked on. Some of it has been approved, like our mission statement, I think, is in there. Should be, I'm sure it is. Other things like subcommittee reports have been presented as drafts and then sort of left hanging. You know, there's a lot of work has been done, but not finalized into a form that we can lift it and put it into the management plan. So this is what I call the logjam problem. we create more logs and they float down the stream and get stuck. And so the challenge is to break the logjam and get things moving, get them finalized. And this, of course, in connection with revising the management plan. And so the management plan, incredibly, was put together in about 18 months anyway, in 2018. The management plan was written, presented to the Selectboard, approved, and so that's our management plan right now. And that was an amazing achievement, I think, to have done that. And it needs work, it needs updating, and so 2023, there was presented a revised management plan that was a large part of which was the Arrowwood survey of the land and proposal for trails. And that was prior to my serving on this committee, but my understanding was that it was not presented to the Selectboard. So it obviously hasn't been approved. Now, so the next step is that Daniel Smith, who works with management plans, that has been part of his job, had worked actually on the 2023 revision draft, but also took that further, and we charged him with working on that draft and incorporating materials into it. He sent me what he's done, and I would say, he made it start, but there's a lot of work still to do. In a large part of that being to incorporate the work that we have done that I was referring to as not finalized. So I put this on the agenda. I took that initiative to assemble that list of documents so we could sort of see what we have on the table, and try to find a way through towards getting that onto the, oh, yes, thanks.
I thought I'd try to pull up that list,
Yeah, that's the document.
although I don't know how to move the,
So yeah, that's our
text.
challenge, is to find a way to get things which we've agreed, but also things that we've written as drafts and get them into the ultimate objective, which is to have a new management plan. Clearly a trails plan, an agreed trails plan is substantial, got to be a substantial part of that, but there are other things that need work. So that's my introduction, and
This is a lot.
I yield to the chair.
Okay, Melissa, go ahead.
I wanted to comment and say thank you for organizing that. It's a lot. My suggestion is that we identify some that are the low-hanging fruit, ones that we could actually complete so that we can feel some success in ticking one of these things off the unfinished list, rather than just saying like, oh, well, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Like, I suggest that we spend just a few minutes right now picking one that we think could be most easily completed, and then working that way. Once we have one done, we'll have some momentum and maybe feeling a little bit better about this overwhelming task.
Can you give us a starting point?
Well,
I mean,
could I take a step back just before
Sure.
we do there? Does anybody else have any comments off the top of their heads right now? Go ahead, both of, okay, well, because there's multiple, maybe I'll take the co-chair's prerogative and ask a question. I know Daniel had a vision for and even had volunteered to integrate everything into the stewardship plan. Is that basically what we see here in the proposed March 2023? Did he, as you guys discussed after last meeting, did he turn anything over and say, okay, this is as far as I've gotten in that process? Because I remember we had asked him to like be the integrator writer, absent, contracting out to someone.
Right, there was, yeah.
I just
So-
want to know where it stands for, where Daniel left off.
Yeah, and maybe just stepping back one before Daniel offered to pick this up, there was a proposal we discussed to kind of put all of these documents in the wheelbarrow and trundle it up to write an RFP for somebody who would take this truckload of documents and work with them under our guidance. And well, it would have been a challenging job for anybody to do that because of the amount of material that we've generated that really isn't finalized and doesn't have a consensus. But yeah, so Daniel took that on that made that offer, and I suppose consistent with my understanding of how 2018 management plan was established, which was really sort of one dedicated person who was willing to burn the midnight oil.
Yeah, there was the chair at that point that just, we had a deadline that was actually, a federal deadline because we had federal funding. We had to have a plan in place within a year. So that's why it got done. And that's why there are parts that are inconsistent and weren't quite right, and that's why the bylaws weren't fully run through the select board.
That makes sense.
There was a
Yeah.
federal deadline. At the same time, the chair was also moving out of town for a
Right.
job in Montpelier, sold her house, buy a new house, start a new job. So it's not perfect,
Right.
but it passed muster for then.
Goodness.
All right, so it sounds like we don't actually know exactly where Daniel left off.
He did send me the document he was working on, and
Is that
which-
on this list at all?
yeah, he took the text. It's not in this list.
Okay,
He took the text, the 2023 document, and was working on that. A lot of what he did was sort of add marginal notes and comments, and well, it's not in the packet, but I have it.
okay,
And I
great.
can share it with other members of the committee, but I'm not, it's still needs a lot of work.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So just because he and I were both on that March 23 committee,
Right.
his task I was on it with Amy when she was still on the committee. His task of the three of us was to do the overall document, looking it over, what kind of little changes can we make, assuming we're not going to task everything. We eventually wanted to put in the trail plan and any of the ecological
Mhm.
added information. into that document. So it seems like that might be the document wherever he left off at. That we want to take these other pieces and insert in. I think that was at least his vision. We don't have to fulfill his vision, but I think that's what was the plan at the time, just so people know.
And the name of that document?
It's, Ian has it someplace, and I don't
Okay.
know how Daniel renamed it, but it
Okay.
would have been Daniel's edits to the March 23
Yeah,
version.
it's one of these
Okay.
long.
And
Sure.
that was the one that had the big public meeting about and had a lot of,
Could you send it to us all? Could you send it to us?
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I will. And,
but we've
Yeah.
never seen it, just so people know. If,
Mhm.
like he said, I'm imagining it's very rough and we have not seen it yet because
Okay.
he didn't get to that stage.
Right.
Is that right?
yeah, and thanks for clarifying how the 2018 document became the proposed one 5 years later from last year. And who was involved in that. And it was a subcommittee of 3, as opposed to the subcommittee of 1 that was sort of picked up by Daniel, I suppose. So yeah, I think this is really emphasizes how a small number of people, even one person working really
Yeah.
hard can make progress, and then bring it to the
Right.
full committee that can then, it's going to have a big task to
Yeah.
go through it. Oh, I meant to mention that you, as you would know, Cecilia, the 2 documents, 2018, 2023, they were, I think, fed through a track changes software, so that there is a version that was presented up at the school, which shows what was changed
Mhm.
between the 2, the 2018 and the draft.
And I think one of the reasons Daniel had volunteered to be like the drafter is not only that he does it professionally, but he was involved in that first 2023, and he looked at it, just drove him crazy. Like he wanted to change all these little things all over, and this is not even organized right, and this and that and that. He had all these ideas back then about the way it should be, but we as a subcommittee made a decision that we can't rewrite the whole thing, for expedience, in order to get the trail plan in sooner. We thought he made a separate list of things he wanted to change in the future, but we would really just look at, what needs to be changed in order to adopt a trail plan that we didn't know yet because we had not reached consensus on where exactly the trails would be or whatever, but we were just trying to get it in order enough to have that public meeting. So I think we'll have to make a decision how much we really want to start from scratch and reorganize the 2018 one. Because the 2023 one really kind of picked up on that 2018 and kind of kept most of that. And a lot of that doesn't make sense right now. And that's why I was wondering how much he went into changing all the order and the things that he was planning to do. So it's just wondering. I'm sorry, I'm taking.
Yeah,
time on
I
that. Go
wanted
ahead,
to-
Chase.
And Melissa and Cecilia, I want to ask for your help with clarifying this, and I brought this up before, that after the last public engagement meeting, right? At that time, it was, I think, Jesse and Caitlin were the chairs, and they were having trouble with the select board, right? There was the drama on Front Porch Forum back and forth, where the select board, the comment came out that they would never approve a management plan or something like that. And so they met and asked, like they met with Jay and one other member and walked in the forest and talked about what the select board needed to see for approval. And we had met after that and decided that for the initial step, or the next step, was going to be to add a revised trail plan, which I'm gonna email out to you guys right now, but it was that revised map that had select board input. And then the trail stewardship plan and the Abenaki language agreement. And that was gonna be the extent of the revision at that point, and the select board was into that. They said, that's enough for us.
Well,
The
there was
group
also the
as a group?
comprehensive management plan.
And the comprehensive management plan, right, was to incorporate the changes from the public.
Right. Mhm.
But
Okay.
all members of the select board or
Well-
just who was on the walk?
I think the way I interpreted it was that there were a couple select board members that were really the strong personalities in pushing back against the management plan. And they were the ones that were asking for those changes. And it was good feedback too, we got from them, like, they wanted to see pedestrian only trails. And
And to be clear, I don't think they were speaking for the whole select board. They
Yeah,
could,
that's what I was trying to.
they were,
get at.
they were saying, this is what we personally are looking for.
right, but I think Jay
As
Fur was the
select-
one that said, I will never
Exactly.
vote for this or whatever.
Right.
Well, there was other stuff, yeah,
Yeah, but that was
purchasing stuff,
their individuals
that's all.
that were trying to help it move forward.
Yeah,
But I don't think, there was no negotiated deal or anything, but it was just to try and get some clarity on what was needed.
so anyway, we had hit a point and then we had a bunch of turnover, and help me. But I remember we had hit a point where we had a pretty clear goal to what a stopping point would be with endlessly editing the management plan. And then a lot of other good stuff has come up, like the wildlife stewardship plan. Like, I think we all would like to see that incorporated in. And if we want to get something if we're trying to prioritize, I think at least voting on those pieces that we never voted on. And I know the trails plan is still like something that's in flux right now, but if we're talking about prioritizing certain things.
Okay, that's a really helpful addition to that chronology. Ian, were you gonna add?
Yeah, this is before my time on the committee, but at a time when I was sort of watching things pretty closely. And I think my understanding then from that time is that the select board was hearing a lot of public input, public comments about the management plan. So it wasn't I think it would be wrong to characterize it as two members of the select board who sort of individually had opinions. They were hearing from people. And of course, part of what they heard was the public meeting up at the school was it March of 2023, where there were a lot of vocal critics of the proposed management plan revisions. So that's my memory of what I witnessed. And so it indicates that it wasn't just the select board, it was a public, a mood of the public that was what was influencing them.
That was my understanding too. They're responding to direct comments that they were getting. Melissa,
I just wanted to, since we're kind of doing a history and you're both sitting here, just to remind us all, part of what Chase was talking about got kicked off with some spending that didn't go through the proper channels. So just always
Oh.
really,
I forgot that.
yes,
Yeah.
that kind of started the problem. So just always really good to remember to go
Yeah.
through the proper channels when we think about spending money here.
right, and they also looked at our bylaws and realized that we
Funny.
had bylaws that matched the rest of the town committees. So there was a number of things that drew their attention at that time.
So
And-
this is really hard to take minutes on.
No,
You don't have to.
So this is,
I'm sorry.
no, don't be, that's fine. I'm gonna kind of skip over this.
I agree. It's not a decision. It's
It's
not,
Right.
yeah, I think that's fine. And I
Discussion.
kind of felt that these kinds of things that we had to do on the side, we're trying to respect public meeting laws. So these little meetings that groups of people did didn't serve us well in the end, I think. I think that's part of the frustration that Nick and I
Dave.
know, Caitlin, thank you. That Nick and Caitlin had, they thought they had agreement someplace, but then they come to this table and not everybody's aware of these conversations in the woods. And so one of the things I really appreciate about what Daniel did was sort of emphasizing that we have wanted to move forward with the culture here of respecting each other, of talking with each other, of not having, side discussions behind closed doors, trying to work well together. And I miss him for those kinds of statements, because I don't tend to make touchy-feely statements, but I think we're at a position now that not only we need to, but we can go forward with a sort of a culture of acceptance, explanation, and working jointly. I think we can do it this time, Ian. It's a short answer about getting all these pieces in.
May I ask a question?
Maybe right first and then Sam.
So early on, 10 minutes ago, we were what's the first thing we're gonna tackle? So what I sort of heard was finish the trail plan and finish the wildlife plan. Is that the sequence?
I think
That jumps out to
that
me.
was thrown out there, but
Okay,
we haven't.
all right, well, I'm trying to,
My suggestion was to pick one thing.
okay.
Low hanging fruit. What's the one off that list that can move the ball forward that we could say, yes, we can get this done in the next, I don't know, month or two?
What's your suggestion?
Let me take a look again.
Okay.
Well, you look, I don't know if low hanging fruit, I think of sequencing. What do
Okay,
we have to
maybe
do
that's a better
first
way,
to get
better
the
way to
next
do it.
thing done?
Yeah,
And it seems
be
like,
better.
were you gonna say something?
well, go ahead. finish
It seems like, if there's broad agreement, and it may fit with the wildlife stewardship plan, if we figured that out, then I think we can figure out what trail system works well with it. Does that make sense? To me, I see it in that order.
I agree with you.
And
Well, we had decided to have that trails conversation because we felt like whatever the trails decision was would then inform the wildlife stewardship plan.
I kind of, yeah, so my thought was it was more the reverse, because what we were hearing, at least what I was hearing in comments going back to that original meeting, was not being able to see some of the maps and the buffer zones and whatever relative to the trails. They're not on the same map, da, 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 da. It seems like we needed to establish that core wildlife stewardship to understand, okay, how do we have to adapt the trail, either building technique or route or whatever it is. I thought we got really far on the trails program, but it was sort of still stuck in that piece. But maybe I'm wrong. Do other people have other memories of?
Yeah.
You wanted to,
Oh, sorry, Sam.
It's more of a general question, so I don't need to, I can hold that for later, since you guys have sort of moved on and are talking about something else.
When I found myself, struggling in that, and this may bear on the bigger conversation, and trying to come up with the, objectives and tasks that Daniel asked us all to take a chunk of. And so I had I think wildlife habitat. And, theoretically, I should have been pretty well prepped for that, having worked on the stewardship plan for wildlife. But, I kept, in looking at the other ones too, they seem to be divorced from sort of the preamble kind of stuff that actually Ian wrote something called the preamble for the natural communities you did. That sort of sets it up. And, I was kind of going in my own head to come up with these management objectives and everything. I don't know if they pass muster with Fish and Wildlife. They might. I mean, Andrea liked our wildlife plan, and they kind of reflected that. But I wonder if, it would be better if we tried to come up with, I would say, first, a reorganization, outline, strictly an outline of the plan. that consolidates a lot of the fairly fragmented pieces in the other one. I mean, it sort of hops around a bit. Some of those pieces I think could be combined. And let's all look at that. And then that becomes a framework maybe for a writer to tackle it and actually come up with some prose, but pull up short, get it checked, cross-check it with everybody before you get to the objectives and tasks. But do like a setup where you might have a brief thing on the condition of that particular attribute or resource, be it recreation, education, wildlife, all, whatever is in there. In some, probably, I think in some tighter organization, fewer elements, ideally. And talk about the conditions really quickly, then maybe talk about the challenges in those conditions, and then maybe opportunities or vice versa, go with opportunities, challenges to realizing those opportunities. Let us, look at that. And that way we get grounded sort of in the logic of what we're ultimately going to turn into objectives and tasks. The other way seems like we're walking backwards into that. We would end up with, an objective to get more school kids involved in the forest, and then a task, have 3 field trips a year. And then ultimately somebody's going to have to look at that and then write some prose that backs all that up. And in the process of doing it, they may discover something that itself should be an objective and a task. So, I mean, that's kind of the way the original one was written, I think. It was, what is the content, the background, the setup for all this? And Daniel was right. There's a fair amount of kind of textbook stuff about geology or wildlife. I think he pointed out, they talk about cliffs. Well, there just aren't any cliffs in the forest, but he talks about the values of cliffs alongside talus and ledges, which there's some, but make it more relevant to the forest, what's actually there. Talk about that a bit. Maybe opportunities is getting too far into management objectives, but maybe talk about the challenges, climate change. What's that got to do? I noticed in the climate section doesn't say a word about, in the list of objectives and tasks, that little section is very short. Doesn't say anything about, that climate's changing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
It talks about erosion, but it doesn't.
So this gets to the heart of, and that we would struggle with in the past, we rewrite the whole thing, which is come up with a whole new organization, pick and choose what we want, and then add in new stuff.
Yeah.
Is that where we want to spend our time? Or do we want to just modify it enough to incorporate trail stewardship, trail plan, Abenaki piece, wildlife stewardship piece, and stuff that somehow into an imperfect but already accepted plan?
Yeah.
So I don't know where the committee's at on that and the time that people want to put into it. And should we be revisiting hiring someone who has management plan expertise and say, describe that and see what they can come up with for us?
I don't know.
Did you want to say something, Ian?
Yeah, actually 2 points, if I may, and then probably Melissa's next. Daniel, one of Daniel's great ideas that actually I don't think was such a great idea was to take all those objectives and tasks and send them out. And what he did was he took what was a list in, let's call it MP2, the 2023 proposal, and he put it into tabular form, which seemed like a good idea, but I don't think it worked. And the result is the document that's being passed around, which at last count, I think was 17 or 18 pages, obviously in sort of an inefficient format because of the table format. But what I understand Daniel wanted to do was to get a working document where like maybe every year we could review it. We could say, okay, under this objective, which of these tasks has been completed?
Right.
Well, you know, if there are something like 100 tasks in that document now, it's not succeeding as that kind of working document. But at the same time, you know, by divvying it up between us, a lot of careful thought was put into that, and it's documented as written form. So we, you know, we shouldn't write it off, but it's going to need a lot of work to, I believe, to turn it into something that we can work with. The second point that I think we should really be aware of is that the wildlife stewardship plan that Brad presented a month ago was a huge amount of work, and it was to a great extent very novel. Because it incorporated new understanding of how forests function and how they're put together, or how they put themselves together, and how humans influence that process. So there's an awful lot of very valuable material there. What it does is it comes to the conclusion that if we really manage this forest from the perspective of wildlife stewardship, we wouldn't have trails above the power lines, you know, and that's clearly a, you know, sort of contentious issue.
And
But
to
it's-
clarify, that wasn't
Well,
something
but
we
no, if I
talked
could
about in
finish,
our committee,
If I could finish.
in our subcommittee. So that was something that was added in by one person, not something that was
Well,
part of the
I take
subcommittee.
issue with that.
Whatever, it's in that document, it's very.
But it wasn't
carefully
approved
argued,
by our
Very,
subcommittee.
very
That was
carefully.
That was just something that one person added. And we had looked at a draft that didn't have that.
Mhm.
And
Well-
then it was added.
Well,
Well-
so it's, I'm saying that a lot of work was put into that, and it was very thorough, and it was all documented. It was based on a lot of it new literature, you know, citations to recent publications. And it came to that conclusion based on wildlife stewardship that ideally you'd sort of basically keep humans out of the way, if that's a reasonable summary of what Brad suggested. So, you know, the challenge then is how to evaluate the opposing arguments. You know, there should be ideally a set of arguments that Brad presented that say no trails above the power lines. There should be another document that says we have the evidence that says there should be trails and there should be a connection to the Sunshine Line, or whatever, you know, the desire is. So I think the onus is really on the people who want trails and want trails above the power lines to be able to document that position and create something that we can balance against the document that.
Ian, I want to push back on that because I participated in the Wildlife Stewardship Committee in good faith. Right? I feel like I really want wildlife stewardship to be a part of it. And like we met with Andrea and got a lot of good feedback, and Brad did a bunch of great writing, and I agree with almost all of it. And then the idea that trails should only be below the power line was added in separately without the subcommittee. You know, we were a subcommittee that was added in and then sent out to the community, which we got a lot of feedback on. I know you didn't send it out.
I have to,
But
I
think that
James-
being proposed as the wildlife stewardship stance isn't representative of what the wildlife stewardship subcommittee did. And so
Okay.
that is a baseline that needs to be.
So wait a minute, I'd rather we not adjudicate this at this meeting.
Okay.
And I hear that you have a
I just say I
different
disagree.
view. You can definitely say you
I've got
disagree.
emails that will back me up, but I
But-
do agree,
but-
where I do agree, it was presented only as a draft to give the committee a look over our shoulder at where we were.
Mhm.
And we hadn't been able to get people together to talk about it, but someone said, let's get a status report on the wildlife stewardship plan.
Mhm.
So here it is. It went into the packet and boom.
Okay,
So
So-
anyway,
Yeah, so I know I hear both of you, what each of you were saying, that there was a surprise to you of the last version. It went into the packet without that being approved by the subcommittee. So that's just good knowledge. When we go to review it as a whole committee, we can either decide to send it back to you guys to make a joint thing, or just bring that to the committee, to the full committee, and we'll review it and, you know, the evidence behind it and where we want to go from here and where it does or doesn't conflict with the proposed trails to date. It's just good to have that knowledge without, without necessarily having to decide it one way or
Yeah.
another.
And
Melissa?
no, I'm just responding to Ian saying that
Right.
it's, the onus is on us to create another document in
Yeah, think we have
support
a
of
lot of
alternate
that.
trails. That seems like not a good path.
okay. Can
Great.
we,
Yes,
Melissa,
I have a couple of comments, right. I'm not sure what good it would do to create an opposing document at this point in time. It's just more of this. I also wanted to comment that this can also be a problem with the working groups, which we also now have been notified that we need to be much more careful about that. You know, probably what we were doing was not correct. The third comment is that when you tackle something at home, you get into a plumbing problem and you're like, geez, this is just above my level. You have to call a professional, right? I kind of feel like that's where we are with this. We could go back and make a big list of objectives. It's not a bad idea, but it's going to take a really long time. I feel like we are at the point where we have exceeded our limits as a committee of what we can do to move this forward without, you know, taking votes and deciding things, and that a professional would be of great help to us in organizing and the management plan in the way that could be helpful, could have new suggestions from a professional's standpoint, not just, you know, a plumbing, you know, me calling over my neighbor and saying, hey, what do you think? It's still leaking. I did this and this.
Lauren, because I was thinking of that as our next step, like maybe instead of handing it over to somebody and doing a big RFP, maybe we just ask for a consultant to start with, that maybe they'll take on the job, but maybe that we can sit here and have that conversation with them, that given this set of documents, these contentious issues, this messy old management plan, maybe we'll have a conversation and together come up with an outline. So I was gonna go with calling your neighbor as
Sure,
as one
next
step
step,
below,
next
just
step,
handing it
sure,
off to
right.
someone. But right, you were about to chime in.
No, I wasn't. I'm agreeing. I think we're in need of outside help to help us get organized, because there's so many important parts that finding the low-hanging fruit or working in parallel on these two, we're just moving.
So we resurrecting the RFP concept. But I think one argument against that is that it would be a horrible task to present to somebody. We've got to get things a bit organized. So and we're running out of time,
Yeah.
but I'm going to make an offer, which is to take what Daniel was working on and implement things that he put in the margin or not, but also incorporate some of my own thoughts about how the MP2 should be revised to make it better organized. And I would volunteer to do that. It's a good winter project, but maybe, you know, I'm not sure I'm ready for a month from now, but 6 weeks maybe. I would, if in the way that this committee authorized Daniel to work on the document and bring back something, I'm offering to pick up where he left off in a defined amount of time and bring something that with the objective that what I bring back could become the basis for an RFP.
Okay. Comments, thoughts? Melissa?
I have a concern, just that, you know, 4 months from now, we'll get back a document that has hundreds of notes on it. You know, what do you think of this? So how about this? How about this? How about this? Whereas with the professional or the neighbor, I'm looking more for like, hey, let's do this. Here's A, B, C, D, E. Not them saying, how about this? How about this? How about this? Have you tried this? Have you
Yeah.
tried this?
So I don't necessarily see that. That's not what I
Right.
heard from what Ian said. What I'm
That's my
hearing is
concern, I
he could
guess.
have something by mid-December for
Okay.
us to look at.
Okay,
And in the meantime, we might want to follow that second track of, should we hire somebody else either as a part-time, a one-off consultant or contingency that they might take it on. Did you have, Brad or, right, I thought,
I was just gonna suggest maybe take a chunk of it. Just get going and start on it. And look at the whole, then we could look at the whole, like the whole skeleton of it. And
Who are
maybe
you
with
saying
some,
that to?
pardon me?
Are you saying that to Ian for
Yeah.
to do that? Okay.
Well, everybody, I mean, it's an idea, but maybe we start with do an outline, show us a skeleton and maybe a sample of some relatively innocuous section, maybe. Just to give an idea of what it's, of the skeleton and make sure that looks right. And then after that, then flesh it out.
And we do have
I don't know.
management plans from other towns. Some of, so some of those plans are similar enough to our situation that we can use those as helpful resources. I'm willing to do that, dig into some of the other management plans that we're aware of.
so time check, it's 7:55.
Yeah.
And it sounds like I'm hearing support for, even with your help, hiring somebody to move forward to help draft a final master plan. So we'll have to look at that RFP. So if we could
can-
put that on the November 25th agenda.
Should I? Okay. So I will send that RFP draft out and we'll discuss it at the next
Yeah,
meeting.
and do you think you wouldn't have finished what you want to do, but would you be able to report out by the 25th what your initial steps have been, what you see is needed, how you think RFP might need to be tweaked to achieve that? Okay, excellent. I'm worried, and any other quick comments? I want to make sure we have time to get to the future meetings, because one of them is December 23rd, which is
Yeah.
suspiciously close to
And
Christmas.
actually, if we could follow the agenda, well, we sort of talked about the Biofinder meeting,
Yeah.
which is in January. So we've been requested to find 2 or 3 of us. I'm willing to be one. We've got a couple of months to finalize who else might join me. I'm intrigued to learn more about Biofinder. I'll volunteer for that. So should we put that on the next agenda to people think about, do they want to volunteer?
Yeah, I was thinking that we would need more information. Maybe some people are very familiar with it, but it seemed, maybe it was in the agenda. Let me look down there, or in the documents. I don't quite see it, but I see your hand, Sam. I'm just holding up on it.
Yeah, it's all good.
So it won't be too late in November to talk about this, or would we lose our spot? Will we still have 3 or 4 spots? On the Biofinder, if we defer that to November?
I think we can do that because the date is.
January, I
sometime in
believe it's January 9th.
Right,
And
yeah.
I think that if there's enough interest and the first one fills up, Jens Hilke, who's gonna run it, sounded interested in doing a second one.
That would be
So
great.
I think that November is probably fine.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right, so,
If anyone thinking of joining that, who wants more information, could talk with Sam.
yeah, I would love to, but I don't know about the timing.
Can I go back to the RFP just for a second?
Sure.
So what's our timeline to get the language for the RFP and who's gonna draft that?
It seems like, I'm just making stuff up here right now.
Yep.
But we have a draft RFP already
Yeah.
that we can review. I don't know who will what we'll decide to finalize that. I'm sure we have to run it by Josh. I don't know how we would advertise it. Danielle had some ideas about that. In order to access, get it in front of people who would respond. I'd imagine we'd want to hire somebody early next year. Like January, is that too late? And that would be after you have the material you wanted to prepare. We maybe have a meeting in January about it. And if we're able to review applicants at the same time at that January meeting, then hopefully we'd have something to hand that person. Does that sound like a reasonable schedule, or is that just too scary?
No, that's fine. I was hoping that, or perhaps within the next 2 weeks, somebody on the committee with the RFP could sit down with Josh to get some help.
We
I
did,
think we did that.
We did that already?
we did.
So we don't
talk
need to
with
do that
Jo-
again.
Josh sent like a skeleton
Okay,
version. He was
all right.
aware that we were thinking about it.
All right, good.
I think we have to know what we want.
Yep,
Yeah.
But, and I like the idea of short-term help with a potential to do a major rewrite, but I don't know how easy that is to advertise for or get someone to agree to. Do you want to be on a little subcommittee to talk with Josh about this?
Sure.
You and Ian he can resurrect it. You've seen
Sure.
lots of contracts that have had to go through the town.
Mhm.
Does anybody want to join right on the subcommittee, or we?
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
You should
Or-
do it.
I thought you're allowed to have 3.
No,
Two.
they're really two's, yeah, what I'm saying.
Okay.
Let's go.
And it's a working group.
What's a quorum?
Well, it's.
I know
it's
what the
not
quorum
based-
is, but I thought it was smaller.
No, no, it's really about doing things outside of the public eye.
Right.
So you can have a couple people work on a singular thing and bring it back.
So
to
that's the
big
word that
committee.
came back, just 2 for our committee
Yeah, that was the recommendation.
recommendation. Okay.
Yeah.
So you two are in
Yep.
charge. Okay. So I don't know if you want to make a note of that in the minutes, right? I don't think we have to pass that.
And then you're supposed to, the next meeting, you're supposed to come back and report out with
Yep.
full committee comment.
Great. All right. I want to give a second for Sam and then Jim, if you have anything to add at this point, but Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess you kind of already covered my question about, how does this committee move forward if subcommittees aren't allowed? And so I won't really dwell on that, but I do want to defend Brad in the wildlife stewardship plan, because I'm also on the emails and nothing got snuck into the wildlife stewardship plan. It was as early as July 21st, if not earlier, there was a draft that was sent out to Chase and myself that has the same language that the most recent version has. And I don't think that it was presented to ACFC until the end of August or maybe even September. So it was over a month.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to
Okay,
defend Brad
well,
because
sorry, I didn't,
it
I
just
missed
seems
that.
like he was being demonized over something that wasn't true.
we had never talked about it.
We had not talked about it as a group, and I just wanted to make sure that, like, it was sent out and we had a chance to look at it. It was not looked at and commented on, and that's, I feel like, more on Chase and myself than it is on Brad. So I just wanted to
Okay.
throw that out there.
That's
That's
helpful.
all I had to say.
Okay, and that's really helpful so that people, I like to acknowledge both what the facts are, but also what the feelings are.
Sure.
And so I think in this case, the facts might help alleviate feelings issues. Jim, do you want to add anything? Or question anything? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to
No,
make
but
you.
I do think, gosh, I would love to do some homework. Yeah, there's so much.
It's a lot.
That
It's
is a-
intimidating, for sure, but maybe I can, I don't know who I should reach out to kind of get up to speed on some of this stuff and find where these documents are. Ian's one, okay,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
I can.
And then
connect with you.
And the website that Brad did, Melissa, go ahead.
just be careful reaching out that you're not violating open meeting law. It's fine to talk one-on-one with someone, but
Well, like is this information available to the public in
yes,
a way that I can?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
yeah, that's not
websites.
decision-making, deliberating, introducing new ideas. That's okay. We can tell you where it's available to the
absolutely, yes,
public.
yeah, yeah,
Even
absolutely.
more than one of us can tell you.
Right, right, right.
Is it on the website? Is that
Some stuff is.
It's
Then there's
pretty-
another website.
The website will give you a really
Yeah.
great place to dig in.
Yeah.
It's pretty well organized now.
Okay, great.
November.
November 25th is the next one. Again, Ian will be compiling the agenda. Chase will be leading the meeting.
Hold on, I gotta look at my calendar. Here we go.
Will we have a quorum?
So that's
Yeah,
the
on
Monday.
Monday, yeah, yeah.
Monday after Thanksgiving.
Before.
Oh, it's after.
It's before.
No,
The 25th is before Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving is the 25th,
Yeah, I'm here that.
28th.
oh, it's the
Meeting.
28th. I stand corrected. I thought it was weirdly the 21st.
So the Monday before, does that work? Cause that's school break, right, for you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Still works? Okay.
The next one may be more of a challenge. 23rd of December would be the fourth Monday.
Yeah, we could move it up, make it the third Monday if we want. We've done it in the past to move it back so we could
So
also
that'd be
look at the 16th or the
Monday the
30th.
16th. Yeah, we can't get this,
We might not be able to get
Room.
this room.
yeah, we can't have this, the select board would be here.
Go down.
Oh,
We have been in the other little room. Do people have a preference around the December 23rd versus the 16th, the Monday before the 30th?
The 23rd is my preference, but. do the
Yeah.
23rd.
The 23rd is a school break. I think there's a good chance I'll go visit family.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like
okay.
the day before Christmas.
Yeah.
Eve.
So the 16th.
16th would, yeah.
Shoot, 16.
16th.
16th.
16th?
Yeah.
Okay.
And who am I working with?
Chase.
Oh, I thought that was the November meeting.
And December
And
and January.
December and January.
And January.
3 months.
3.
3 months, we're doing
Okay.
3-month terms.
Boy,
Wow, this is.
we're gonna be real buddies by the end. of the
That's the goal. All right, so, did I cover everything? I went off to look at my calendar.
Yeah, I think we're done unless. there's
Yeah.
any final things.
I think so.
All right,
Good job,
thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
4 minutes.
Any
Point of
motions?
order, point of order.
Oh, sorry.
Low.
I believe you are required to allow the public to comment. And given the late hour, I will keep my thoughts to a very brief minimum. You should put trust in Eon. I think you will find he can be the person who can get you to filling out the background, bringing it up to date, from which you then have a discussion of objectives. So you need one person. Person should be knowledgeable. Ian is knowledgeable. He's done it before. And I would put off any RFPs until after you see what he comes up with at your next meeting. I will stop there. I have other ideas about how to proceed, but that's enough. I'm sorry, I felt it was necessary to let the public say something.
Yes, Bob, that was entirely my fault. I'm sorry. We were supposed to let you talk after each agenda item.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment? No, Bob, do you want to follow up? Or are you good? He's gone. All right, he's good. All right, let me see.
So entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, that's great.
Second.
Entertain any motions to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, thank you.